everyone. It's my sixth flashcard video. I'm just going to get started. CAR is a corrective action report request. It's a formal response setting out the plan to correct a defect in the system, such as a security vulnerability. This type of report or request may be implemented as part of a wider failure reporting, analysis, and corrective action system. DRP, Disaster Recovery Plan. A documented and resource plan showing actions and responsibilities to be used in response to critical incidents. This plan may also provide for practice exercises or drills for testing and to familiarize staff with procedures, as well as facilitating a smooth transition in the event of disaster. Plans must stress the importance of maintaining secure systems. Location. The geographic area a site resides in. This is important security consideration, especially as regards to reliable utility supply. RAID is a redundant array of independent, inexpensive disks and devices. Oops. One too far. Multiple hard disks that can be configured to provide improved performance and or protection for data fault tolerance. Several levels of backup are suggested by this device system, ranging from level 0 to level 6, each level representing a particular type of fault tolerance. Redundancy planning. Most disaster recovery plans call for presence of redundant systems and backed up data. One goal is to eliminate single points of failure. At the high end, these plans may involve alternate sites. These are can be classified as cold, warm, or hot, depending on their state of readiness. Redundancy is also provided by spare parts or key systems, servers that can provide for failover clusters. Redundant network links, disk arrays, as known as RAID, power supply, and backup ISP services. RPO is Recovery Point Objective. The amount of data loss that a system can sustain, measured in time. RTO is Recovery Time Objective. The period following a disaster that a system may remain offline. Storage and retention policies. Many security systems focus on the protection of data that is in use on a live or production system. When data reaches the end of its useful life, it may either be destroyed or archived. Our retention policy will dictate which in case and for how long information needs to be retained. This may be subject to legislative requirements. The storage facility needs to have similar security mechanisms to the production system to ensure that the data is kept securely and accessed only by authorized users. Another storage security consideration is data copied to backup media, especially when it is stored off-site. Succession planning. Businesses can only depend so far on RAID procedures. Many tasks, especially at management level, require skill and experience to conduct properly. Succession planning is the task of identifying ways in which a business could cope if a disaster led to loss of key staff. UPS, uninterruptible power supplies, also known as UPS. They make a lot of beeping sound if they get powered off or get shut off by too much power going through, like dirty power. An alternate AC power supply that ensures power continuous regardless of power consistency issues or failures. This system requires an array of batteries, a charging circuit, an inverter to convert DC to AC current, a circuit to allow the system to take over from a failing power supply, and some degree of spike, surge, or brownout protection. Continuity of operations planning, also COOP plan, or business continuity planning, BCP. The process of designing systems and operations so that they are as little affected by incidents as possible and so that the resources are available to recover from them. Mission critical system, a function or asset without which an organization could have catastrophic failure, such as incurring enormous losses or going out of business. Failover. The process of if a disaster occurs and causes systems to fail at one site, the systems will spin up at a separate special site to ensure no outages. Succession planning. Human capital resiliency, meaning that if one person were to suddenly be unable to provide a business function, is there someone else able to carry out the work? AAR, After Action Report. A form of lessons learned documentation after disaster is recovered from to determine how effective COOP or DR planning and resources were. High availability. Loosely defined as a 24/7, 365 days a year uptime system, sometimes also referred to as series of nines, such as 5 nines uptime. Uptime. Property of a resilient system having high availability over a specific time frame, such as a year. Fault tolerance. A system that can experience failures and continue to provide the same or nearly the same level of service. Redundancy. Ability to provide fault tolerance through providing components not essential to the normal function of a system, but that allows the system to recover from a failure of another component. ALE is annual loss expectancy. The amount that would be lost over the course of a year. This is determined by multiplying the SLE by the annual rate of occurrences, ARO. BIA is a business impact analysis. This determines the likelihood of a threat exploiting vulnerability and the costs to the business should a vulnerability be exposed. MTTF, mean time to failure, or MTBF, mean time between failures. These two terms together represent the expected lifetime of a product or system. MTTR, mean time to repair. The term used to measure of the time taken to correct a fault so the system is restored to full operation. Risk assessment. Process of reviewing the threats and vulnerabilities and their effects on the organization's assets and procedures. SLE is single loss expectancy. The amount that would be lost in a single occurrence of the risk factor. SPOF, single point of failure. Don't have those. A component or system that would cause a complete interruption of service if it failed. Threat assessment. A prioritized list of probable and possible threats. Some of these can be derived from a list of assets, that is, threats that are specific to your organization. Others may be non-specific or to your particular organization. MEF is mission essential function. A process that cannot be deferred, meaning that the organization must be able to perform the process as close to continually as possible. And if there's any service disruption, the mission essential process must be restored first. KPI is key performance indicators. Metrics used in quality and performance management and are also likely to be quoted in a BIA. RFID, radio frequency ID. A chip program with an asset data used to identifying tangible assets and track their location. Asset management. The process of tracking and configuring inventory, often in a database. Supply chain. A series of companies involved in fulfilling a product. Quantitative risk assessment. An assessment of risk by assigning concrete values to each risk factor. Qualitative risk assessment. An assessment of risk by seeking out informed opinions of significant risk factors. Traffic light impact grid. A method of qualitative risk assessment performed by simply creating a table of risk factors and assigning red, yellow, and green indicators to each cell of the table. Risk mitigation, remediation. The overall process of reducing exposure to or the effects of the risk factors. Avoidance. In terms of risk, this means that you stop doing the activity that is risk-bearing. Transference. In terms of risk, this means assigning the risk to a third party, such as an insurance company or a contract with a supplier that defines liabilities. Basically, you transfer the risk to them. Acceptance. In terms of risk, this means that no countermeasures are put in place either because the level of risk does not justify the cost or because there will be unavoidable delay before the countermeasures are deployed. Basically, you're accepting the risk. Buffer overflow. An attack that forces the system to crash or execute arbitrary code, such as viruses by exploiting a programmer's failure to validate inputs, which can lead to the program's memory overfilling. A cookie. Text file used to store information about a user when he or she visits a website. Some sites still use this text file to support user sessions. This type of site can be vulnerable to replay attacks, where the attacker obtains the user's stored text file and resends the session information. Basically, they use your cookie. Escalation. In terms of privilege management, whereas the user gains additional privileges without authorization, this may happen because the user is able to exploit the privilege management system, design and change his or her own privileges. It can also be a result of software exploits, which can crash the system and give the user administrative or root privileges. That's not good. Fuzzing. A means of testing software input validation routines by inputting random or known malicious code. It is also used in packet crafting to generate fake IP and MAC addresses. Input validation. A good programming practice whereby an application reviews and confirms the acceptance of a user's inputs to prevent those inputs from having negative consequences, such as buffer overflows. JavaScript. A scripting language used to add interactively to web pages and HTML format email. This language can also be used maliciously to exploit software vulnerabilities. It is possible to block scripts from running using browser security settings. RAD. Rapid Application Development. A programming environment that helps developers to create software quickly. SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. Process of planning, analysis, design to implementation, and maintenance that are often governed software and systems development. SEH, Structured Exception Handler. A mechanism in Windows for allowing software developers to account for unexpected error conditions that might arise during code execution. Effective error handling reduces the chances that a program could be exploited. Software exploitation. Code that can be used in vulnerability to crash or gain control of software. UAT, User Acceptance Testing. Usually one of the last stages of the software development before release. It's like beta testing. This process proves that the program is usable and fit for purpose in a real-world condition. XSRF, Cross-Site Request Forgery. A malicious script hosted on the attacker's site that can exploit a session starting on another site in the same browser. XSS is cross-site scripting. A malicious script hosted on the attacker's site or coded in a link injected into a trusted site designed to compromise clients browsing the trusted site, circumventing the browser's security model of trusted zones. Zero-day exploits. Zero-day attack. An attack that exploits a vulnerability in software that is unknown to the software vendor or user. Basically, like, no one knows this vulnerability exists. Zero-day attack. Integer overflow. Attack causes the target software to calculate a value to exceed the fixed lower and upper bounds of a while number. This may cause a positive number to become negative, changing a bank debit to a credit card, for instance. Race conditions. A vulnerability where multiple threads are attempting to write a variable or object at the same memory location. Pointer. In terms of memory, a reference to an object at a particular memory location. Pointer dereference. Attempting to access an object at a particular memory address, this process can cause the system to crash if that memory location is set to a null value. Memory leak. Poor programming in which a process that has no longer requires a block of memory fails to release the memory and continues to consume it. This means that less memory is available to other processes. DLL injection. Not a vulnerability of an application, but of the way the operating system allows one process to attach to another and then force it to load a malicious link library. The link library will contain whatever functions the malware author wants it to be able to run. Malware uses this technique to move from one host process to another to avoid detection. Onboarding. Process of welcoming a new employee to an organization and providing them with the access, training, and tools they need to begin work. AUP, Acceptable Use Policy. This policy usually governs employees' use of company equipment. BPA, Business Partners Agreement. This is an agreement between two organizations or set between large IT companies such as Microsoft and Cisco and resellers and solution providers. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. We'll start out with this slide on my next video. Thank you, guys.